moment. Okay, so from now on, it's being recorded. Okay, guys, so good evening, good morning, good day to everyone. We are here, lots of guys, lots of people from all over the world. This is another webinar with Ivana, and it's been organized by our weekly fasting group. It's a group, it's a WhatsApp group, and we unite people who want to fast between 24 and 36 hours every week and cultivate it as a habit. So, in case you are not in the group yet and you find this idea useful, then below this video there are my details. I'm the organizer of the group. My name is Arik, and you're welcome to send me a WhatsApp message and I will happily add you to the group. And today with us we have Ivana, who is a detox specialist, who is a rejuvenation expert, fasting expert, and many other things. And she's gonna give us a webinar tonight about emotional balance on the fasting lifestyle. And probably we'll touch a few other things as well. So, our dear Ivana, over to you.
So, hi guys. It's been a while since I've been here, and today I'm going to try to tackle the tricky subject of emotions, which is sort of a hot button issue for me, at least. I mean, just contemplating this webinar gave me anxiety. Oh, I'm getting a little anxious. So, I was getting triggered, getting prepared, and maybe some of you are going to be triggered today by some of the things that you hear. And for some reason, emotions are not easy for us, and I think it's because most of us are afraid of our emotions, as we never learn how to deal with them. I sort of had to think long and hard about how I should approach this subject, because there's so many complexities and nuances to consider when it comes to emotions, because they're so abstract and so subjective, yet at the same time they have such tremendous power over us. Plus, I had to decide just how far down the rabbit hole I could realistically go in one webinar, and how much clarity and actionable information I could give you in such a short period of time. And I mean, truly useful and concrete information that would actually make a difference in your lives. Now, this is a fasting group. So why are we even talking about emotions when our main focus here is fasting and healing the body? Because anyone who starts detoxing their body on any deep level, sooner or later hits a roadblock where their progress either falters or stalls, or they regress completely, and they're simply unable to sustain this lifestyle. I mean, it's easy to go on an all-fruit diet for 3 to 6 months, or even a year in some cases. But inevitably, what we find is that we reach a point when something almost like sort of snaps inside us. And all of a sudden, we're completely taken over by intense cravings that we simply cannot seem to get under control. So I want to talk about why this happens in the context of fasting, juicing, and the raw food diet, and how our unresolved emotions are the main driving force behind the actions that end up sabotaging our best efforts. I think that we have to discuss emotions in terms of vibrational frequency. Emotions mean energy in motions. The word itself, emotion, implies flow, fluctuation, and motility, mobility, if you will. I think that water is probably a good analogy because in many ways, energy is quite similar to water in that it is mutable and it has movement, fluidity, and it can also adopt varying states and levels of density. For example, water can be solid when it's ice, it can be liquid or gas. And so can the energy also be either really dense or really light and refined. Now, I would like you to think about the concept of a soda fountain. The type you can find in a typical fast food restaurant, which some of you may still remember from a past life when you used to get your burgers and fries and then go and fill up your cup with soda. You know the machine I'm talking about? Yes, no, maybe? All right. So,
Yes, yes.
so if you were to look at a soda fountain, you would see separate spigots or faucets, if you will, that dispense different types of soft drinks, such as maybe Coke or Mountain Dew or 7-Up or Dr. Pepper or whatever. Now, if you know how this machine operates, then you know that there aren't actually 4 different pipes pumping Coke, 7-Up, or Mountain Dew, or Dr. Pepper into their respective faucets. In reality, there's only one hose supplying all of the spigots, even though there are 4 different flavors that come out of each fountain. So what happens is that the machine is hooked up to a singular water source, and each faucet is preloaded with specific flavorings. So the water comes into the machine and gets distributed amongst the separate compartments where it mixes with their respective flavorings. And then when you push the lever, you get a specific drink of your choice. But what I'm driving at here is that despite there being a variety of flavors, there's only one source and type of supply, which in this case is water. And it's only one source of supply that feeds all 4 faucets that are dispensing distinctly different sodas. And these different flavors are like different programs or filters that color our perception of the world, which then informs our actions. So the energy we may be getting can be completely neutral, like water. But because we are preloaded with a proverbial 7-Up formula, every time water comes down the pike, we're going to taste, syrupy lime flavor. And if we have a program that, we are a worthless piece of crap, then anytime we interact with someone, no matter how well or how bad they treat us, we're going to interpret their treatment, based on our belief system that we are a piece of crap. And everything else we do in life is also going to be colored by that particular flavor. So you see, we don't actually get triggered by events. We are triggered by our interpretation of events and what they mean in the context of our life with respect to our sense of self. And that interpretation is based entirely on our programming, because mind and emotions are actually one and the same. Now, you might think that this is contradictory because we're taught that they're opposites by definition. But it's not actually true, because if you think about it, it's the mind that creates our emotions. Our feelings don't just come out of nowhere, but they're actually predicated on our beliefs. Absolutely all emotions are generated as a result of beliefs or definitions that we have about ourselves, the world, and our relationship to it. We cannot have a feeling about anything at all without having created a definition about it first. Upon encountering a situation or an interaction, a mental process of evaluation takes place where we judge something to be good or bad before we experience any emotional response. What's tricky about this is that this processing of information happens at lightning speed, and it all happens in our unconscious mind. So we're not actually aware of how we arrive at the feeling that we're having by the time it registers in our nervous system. So our unconscious mind is the repository that stores all of our experiences. It records all that information and sorts it into categories. For example, this incident here caused pain or was life-threatening. So from now on, anything that resembles that incident automatically equals to being bad and life-threatening. And anytime you experience a similar event, the mind will send you a signal through the nervous system that you will experience as an uncomfortable feeling in your body. Not only that, but your physical system as well is going to react. And this is where our sympathetic nervous system takes over. When this happens, our conscious mind takes a back seat and sort of watches from afar. So that's when our rational self sort of gets hijacked by that primitive reptilian brain. And from that point on, we are no longer in control to make conscious choices based on our free will. Now, as you may know, the sympathetic nervous system mediates the body's response to stress, danger, or environmental challenge by making our adrenal glands pump out norepinephrine. So norepinephrine is adrenaline, and adrenaline increases our heart rate and it dilates our bronchioles, and so that we can breathe easier, while at the same time constricting the arterioles in our skin, as well as the non-exercising muscles. So it literally diverts blood from our internal organs and pushes it into the muscles of our extremities so that we have more strength and power to either fight or run away. It also shuts down our digestive system. It widens our pupils, and it also increases blood glucose levels through glycogenolysis in the liver. And additionally, it also releases fatty acids into the bloodstream from our adipose tissue, meaning just from our fat. Now, this reaction is completely automatic and autonomic, meaning it's not consciously directed by us, and it's completely independent from the conscious mind. So the body simply takes over and does what it feels needs to be done in order for us to survive. I think I told you the story about that time when I tried water skiing. Now, before they strap you into those clunky water skis and hook you up to the boat, the instructor tells you that if you lose your balance and start to fall, or you feel like you're being pulled under the water, you got to make sure to let go of the cable and keep your mouth closed. Of course, every time I would make my new attempt, I would do the exact opposite. I would hold on tighter and open my mouth as wide as I could so I could inhale. As you can imagine, I almost drowned a few times, and I ate a lot of dirty lake water. The kicker is that no matter how many times I told myself before getting up on the skis that if you're going to fall, just close your mouth. And inevitably, as soon as I would start to go under, I would inhale almost in spite of myself. You know why? Because that's the survival instinct that's been hardwired into our brain over the period of maybe hundreds of thousands of years. Because when we know that we are about to become deprived of air, our first instinct is to inhale in order to fill our lungs and our body with oxygen, because breathing equals living. And so this reflex gets turned on automatically without our input. In my example, falling in the water posed an existential threat. So my autonomic consciousness took over and my conscious mind was no longer in control. Now, why does this happen? Because the truth is that our conscious mind is actually the stupidest part of who we are. In fact, it is so stupid and so slow that it simply cannot be trusted with life or death decisions. It cannot be trusted with something as important as survival. And how could you trust it? I mean, if you think about it, it doesn't really know much. If you ask me, I couldn't even tell you what I ate or wore 3 days ago. But my unconscious mind remembers everything I experienced in my life, including what my mother said to my father about me when she was 5 months pregnant with me. So this is why the unconscious mind, which holds all our memories, is the part of us that takes action and takes over. And when it does so, it makes these lightning speed calculations to deploy the best suited tactics to ensure our survival. So now that you know the why, let's talk about how this takeover by the unconscious mind actually happens. The other important component of the fight or flight mechanism is that it's actually a form of trance. And I mean that literally. Remember what I said earlier about how the physical system is affected through the increased heartbeat, expansion of the bronchioles, as well as the release of glycogen, fat, and norepinephrine into the bloodstream. And when these chemicals flood our system, they change both our physical and emotional state. We are literally on drugs. Have you ever been in an accident or, in a situation where you seriously injured yourself? When I was 5 years old, I got hit by a moped. And even though I was really young at the time, I have such a strikingly vivid recollection of how it happened. It was as if everything had slowed down like a movie. And I was watching it. I was watching the bike coming at me in slow motion, which gave me this sort of false sense of perception where I thought that I still had enough time to sort of jump off to the side and get out of the way. But of course, that was only my perception. It wasn't reality. The most interesting thing that happened was that as I watched the moped approach me, I thought to myself, oh my God, this is probably going to hurt a lot, right? But to my shock, when the bike finally hit me, I felt zero pain. In fact, I felt sort of this pleasantly warm sensation in my belly
No one here.
when the front wheel rolled over it. And this used to puzzle me a great deal for a very long time, because at the time I didn't understand how adrenaline affects our body. It's only been 11 years that this has been discovered, that our bodies naturally produce small amounts of morphine. And norepinephrine helps to stimulate the release of this morphine. So in a life or death situation, when the fight or flight is activated, the body gets flooded with norepinephrine and morphine, creating a sort of an anesthetic effect. This chemical cocktail dulls our pain receptors and perceptions, essentially putting us into a drug-induced trance. A similar, albeit a much more muted version of this reaction happens when we experience a secondary trigger and then get to relive that original emotional trauma. So if you are trying to break an addiction by using your willpower, well, good luck with that, because people think that the reason they fail is because they lack willpower. But willpower is irrelevant, because when it needs to be applied in the right moment, you are not there to exercise it. In a way, you're sort of anesthetized. You are under anesthesia. And this is one of the reasons why repeating positive affirmations to yourself doesn't work. You can say that you love yourself till you're blue in the face, and still it won't take. You know why? Because when you are repeating those affirmations, you're saying them to your conscious mind. You're giving instructions to the wrong part of yourself, the part that is not in charge and does not make decisions when those affirmations need to get activated, which would be right in the midst of a stressful situation that's going to trigger your unconscious defense mechanisms. And that's why when we try to effect change via the conscious mind, it doesn't work. If your unconscious mind holds the belief that you are a worthless piece of crap, and then you start telling your unconscious mind that no, you actually love yourself, your subconscious mind is going to laugh at you. Or worse, it might interpret that you actually love being a worthless piece of crap, thus hardwiring that belief even deeper into your consciousness. So if we are ever to change ourselves for the better, instead of talking to the janitor, which is our conscious mind, we got to go directly to the boss, meaning our unconscious mind. And to get through to the boss, you have to understand how it works and how to access it. This is also why therapy doesn't work. I mean, people are in therapy for years and they still have the same exact problem, because it's not enough to understand why you do what you do. The $6 million question is, what can you do about it? The most important question that therapy doesn't answer is, how do you fix your problem permanently? So the reason standard therapeutic approach has such a low success rate is that it engages the conscious mind when the problem is elsewhere. Now, even though the unconscious mind holds more information and performs more vital functions, it doesn't mean that it's always right or that it makes the best decisions. In my water skiing incident, it did the exact wrong thing, albeit for the right reasons. Similarly, most of the time, our unconscious mind will do the wrong thing when it comes to our coping mechanisms. When we get triggered, the unconscious mind perceives it as a deathly threat and deploys whatever survival tactics have been established in the past that have worked for us. And when I say that those survival tactics worked, I don't mean that they were correct or healthy. All it means is that they resulted in our survival. So the unconscious mind made the connection that doing X, Y, and Z equals survival. And it is therefore good. So the chain of events in this process unfolds as follows. First, we experience a traumatic event that was perceived as a threat to our survival. Second, our nervous system responded by releasing neurotransmitters, which is what makes us feel things that are our feelings. The third thing that happens is that we then respond to this excitatory stimulus and to the threatening situation in a certain way until it passes and the threat is gone. And finally, after the fact, the mind, the unconscious mind, assesses our condition. And if we came out of that predicament okay, if we're alive, then that response gets hardwired into the brain as a survival tactic to be used over and over again every time we're in danger. Now, every single time the unconscious mind perceives an existential threat, be it real or imagined, it will automatically trigger the same response, driving us to repeat the same action that we employed when the original threatening event occurred. So most of the time, when we are having a craving for food, alcohol, drug, or what have you, we're not having a craving. In reality, we are having an emotional event. And this emotion is triggered by our conscious mind to move us toward a certain action that is designed to ensure that we make it. But since we're never taught the true purpose of emotions, we want to make them stop because we just don't like to feel unpleasant things. So we fear our emotions instead of seeing them for what they are. And what they are is indicators transmitting data about our inner state. In terms of energy, emotions are one of the components that define our energetic frequency, right? And when our frequency fluctuates, so do our emotions, and vice versa. When our emotions fluctuate, so does our frequency. Negative feelings occur when our energy is filtered through a negative belief system. Metaphorically speaking, if our soda fountain is loaded with yucky or moldy flavoring, we're going to have a bad taste in our mouth every time we run water through that machine. Ultimately, all of our problems stem from our relationship with ourselves, or more accurately, what we believe to be true about ourselves. Have you ever gotten angry when, let's say, you've been standing in line for an hour or so to get into the grocery store, the way we did here in New York in the midst of the pandemic? And as you finally get the okay that you can go inside, some jackhole cuts in front of you and goes ahead of everyone. Now, of course, you get angry. But why are you really angry? Because if you think about it, by cutting the line, this person, however rude and inconsiderate they may be, they didn't actually injure or harm you in any real sense of the word. Nevertheless, you're still angry because you feel cheated. And you feel angry because this person has shown disregard for you and treated you like a schmuck. So you feel angry because by cutting ahead, this individual signaled to you that they're better than you. And therefore, they're entitled to special treatment where they don't have to suffer the indignity of standing in line like everyone else. And so you reasonably assume that the only reason they would feel that way is that they thought that you were irrelevant or not worthy of basic human consideration. And see, this is where we're starting to get to the heart of things. Your perception of someone else's behavior created a threat to your delicate sense of self. And the reason this balance is so delicate is that you've been told by your mom or dad or your teachers that you're worthless and unlovable. But because holding this awareness is too painful, you've been hiding it from yourself by pursuing money, career, relationships, believing that being able to secure these things proves that what you feel about yourself isn't really true and that you're worthy after all. So when you got unceremoniously cut off in line at Whole Foods, annoying it may be, it didn't actually put your life in danger and it didn't cause your bodily harm. But that fragile illusion of worthiness that you so gingerly erected like a house of cards has now been shaken. And all of a sudden you start doubting yourself. As all those bad feelings that you've been covering up with designer clothes and Instagram likes come up to the surface. And now these feelings pose a threat to your existence because you cannot survive in this world if you're worthless or if you have no value. So, congratulations, you've just been triggered. Of course, the only way these feelings could be triggered to begin with is if deep down inside you actually agree with those negative beliefs about yourself, because you cannot trigger something that's not there. All of our core beliefs about ourselves originate from our caretakers. Our parents were the first people who imprinted upon us the value that they attributed to us. And so our sense of self and self-worth is largely based on that primary reflection that we got from them. Now, if your dad wanted a boy and you had the misfortune to have been born a girl, the message is that you are the wrong gender and therefore you are defective. Somehow you missed the mark because you're not what he had hoped for. And sure, maybe down the road, dad will say that he now sees the error of his ways and the girls really are great and that he's so happy to have a daughter. But at that point, it doesn't matter because the damage has been done. That original sentiment stuck and became ingrained in your mind because it was a threat to your survival. Think about it. If you are not good enough for dad, then he might not keep you. He may decide to not feed and clothe you because you're just an encumbrance that he didn't ask for. But now he has to deal with you nonetheless. And so what happens from this point on is that you are going to try to prove your worth to people, and now maybe you're making choices and doing things not because you want to do them, but because you're trying to show dad that you can be just as good as a boy. The big revelation is that other people like us the way our parents liked us. And if our parents didn't love us, then we're going to lack love for ourselves. And so we're going to seek out other people who are not going to love us. Toxic shame is the original sin that leads to all addiction. Now, unlike healthy shame, which is when you do something wrong and you feel embarrassed about it, and then you try to correct it. When you carry toxic shame, we believe that we are fundamentally defective or that we are a mistake that simply cannot be corrected or made right. And we think that about ourselves. Of course, we feel bad. And we don't like to feel bad. So what we do is we find ways to dull those feelings in order to not feel bad. And so we eat, we shop, we gamble, we drink, we smoke, we snort, we clean, and God knows what else, just to escape that soul-crushing feeling. And regardless of what your particular choice of poison may be, at our core, we are all escapaholics, running away from our pain and painful shame. If you are a shame-based person, you're going to be an addict in some way, shape, or form. Shame is such a deep and profound wound that when we are shame-based, all we want to do is hide who we truly are. We want to hide from the world because we believe that if we show the world who we are, we will be shunned and rejected. So if dad rejected you for being a girl, now you're going to go through life and have other people reject you. First, you're going to get bullied in school. Then you'll seek out romantic partners that are either emotionally unavailable or that are going to cheat on you or betray you in a number of other ways. And then you'll have bosses that marginalize you and consistently pass you up for promotions. And all of that will only serve to validate and confirm the original belief that you really are not good enough. Understand that other people talk to you and treat you the way your caretakers talked to you and treated you, which ultimately is how you end up treating and talking to yourself. When you are a shame-based person, your most important job becomes hiding your true self and doing everything in your power to prove that you're not as bad as everyone thinks. And so to deal with that, we start deriving our sense of self-worth from external sources, like our looks or fame or career achievements. Problem is that eventually looks are going to fade, you can lose your job, and then what are you going to do? then you're left with nothing to prop up that straw man identity, and your whole world can collapse. And this is one of the main reasons some people commit suicide. The toxic shame can destroy you. And if you don't do something about it, it will almost definitely destroy you. Our adopted coping mechanisms depend on our response to the original trauma. When a traumatic event first occurs, our brain believes that we are in mortal danger, and it comes up with a response to help us survive. Normally, we do one of four things. We either fight, flee, freeze, or fawn. For example, I was physically and emotionally abused as a child. And when we are being attacked physically, when we're being assaulted, our brain, of course, activates the fight or flight response. And the body starts pumping cortisol and norepinephrine into our tissues, preparing us to either fight or flee. But what if neither of those options are feasible? For example, when I was being beaten, I wasn't allowed to cry because I was told that I deserved my punishment. And therefore, I had to take it like a champ without any complaints or resistance. But when I did manage not to cry, it created a different problem for me. Because you see, if you're not crying, then your attacker assumes that they're not beating you hard enough. Naturally, to remedy this, they escalate the intensity of their assault. Now, if you are a child being physically abused, you can't fight for a couple of obvious reasons. Number one is that your father is a much bigger and stronger person, and on top of that, he's wielding a weapon like a hockey stick. So there's no point in fighting because it's not an even match and you will most certainly lose. Not only that, but then there will be additional repercussions where you're going to get hit even harder because now you need to be punished for insubordination and defiance. The other problem is that even if, let's say, by some miracle, you do manage to take him down, then you're left without a father. And of course, despite all of the abuse, you love your dad and you wouldn't want to hurt him. So then the next thing we can do is flee, right? But fleeing isn't really an option either because where are you going to go? I mean, you're a child, you have no job or means of providing for yourself. You actually need your abusers in order to survive. So the only thing you can do is leave your body. And so avoidance and checking out became my adaptive behavior. If you are the freeze type, then you are probably the scapegoat of the family with no way of escaping or standing up for yourself. So now you spend a lot of time dissociated and detached. You know, you're daydreaming, you're sleeping a lot, you're eating, you're watching TV, maybe you're playing games all day long. Or maybe you're just spending so much time online that the real world passes you by. Now, the fight types most often become bullies because they were allowed to imitate their abuser's behavior. Fighters are often bullies for their younger siblings. and are always in pursuit of overpowering those who are weaker than them. Fight types, may have been spoiled or raised without proper boundaries. So this may have developed as a defense mechanism to that. Now, when the fight type feels abandoned, they tend to respond with anger. So fighters are rageaholics. These are also the people that can sometimes become killers and rapists when their sense of self is threatened. Now, if you cut in line in front of a fight type, they're probably going to punch you in the face. Paradoxically, they can also be very charismatic in public and be admired by their peers. But behind closed doors, they turn into monsters. And that's my mother. She would use me as a punching bag, yet she'd be super nice to strangers who all thought that she was just this wonderful, amazing human being. Now, finally, the flight type needs to keep him or herself constantly busy. They tend to become workaholics, and they find different ways to occupy themselves, and be productive, so they can flee the neglect and abandonment they experienced in childhood. Flighters are compulsive overthinkers and overanalyzers. They're always in their head, just trying to distract themselves from feeling anything. As children, they were likely to have been hyperactive and maybe even diagnosed with ADHD. As adults, these people tend to become adrenaline junkies. These are going to be gamblers, extreme sports type people, who are over exercisers. Now, and the final type, fawn, are people pleasers. They try to avoid conflict at all costs so that they don't have to deal with unpleasantness. And they will go above and beyond to make others comfortable. Fawn types tend to apologize a lot, and for no reason, because they feel guilty when they're angry at other people, and they feel responsible for other people's reactions and behavior. Most of the time, they're not being authentic, and they don't know how to say no to people. They're constantly compromising their values, and sometimes they like to dissociate in social situations. And fawns are the ones that often become sex addicts. Now, of course, you may have more than one of these coping mechanisms. You can have, say, freezing as your primary defense, but you may also be a fawn from time to time, depending on the situation. Whatever the case, these mechanisms are unconsciously used in situations when we feel unsafe, as a way to avoid pain, to avoid grief, or any other unbearable, strong states of body and mind. And these responses are always triggered by something that is reminiscent of the original trauma. Unfortunately, the brain cannot tell the difference between a real event and an imagined one. So when we're triggered, we're not responding to any real danger, but to something that has happened in the past. Nevertheless, the brain responds as if it were real and if the danger was imminent. And anytime we perceive ourselves in danger, the brain is going to mobilize our established defense mechanism and send the signal that we're hungry for something, or that we want a beer or a cigarette or a line of Coke. These substances provide us with a temporary escape. And so that's how cravings come into the picture. when we're eating or drinking or smoking, we don't feel our bad feelings. And so eating or whatever else you do becomes a form of survival. Now, triggers can be a little bit tricky because usually we're looking for obvious things, like when someone calls us stupid or maybe cuts in front of us in line. But a trigger could be a scent, or it could be a color, or a subtle way a stranger moves their eyes or flips their hair. And consciously, you may not even have the tiniest idea that this is what sets you off. For example, if you were sexually abused and there were, let's say, blue curtains in the room where the assault took place, you may now be triggered every time you see that shade of blue. Just seeing it flash by in your peripheral vision on the side of a bus can now initiate the fight or flight response, where the brain goes into survival mode, truly believing that you are right back in that same situation. I saw a woman on YouTube talk about being sexually abused at a boarding school. It happened at night when she got up to go to the bathroom and ran into the groundskeeper who violated her. So now this poor soul gets triggered every time she has to pee. And the only way she can cope is by drinking herself into oblivion every single day. But when she drinks now, you see, she's not reacting to a real situation because she's not being molested anymore, which means that she cannot deal with it as a real situation. In other words, she can't run away and she can't fight her abuser because he's not actually there. So the only thing she can do under the circumstances is to leave her body and dissociate through alcohol. But choosing to partake in self-destructive behavior is not a well thought out conscious process. Our mind creates a shortcut because a serious matter of survival has to be addressed very quickly and efficiently, whereas our conscious mind is simply too slow. So when a stressful event occurs, instead of telling you, oh, remember that time when dad beat you with a hockey stick and he broke your wrist, right? And then he felt bad and he took you out to get some pizza. And do you remember how that took the edge off the pain and made you feel better? And not only because the pizza was so delicious, but because dad seemed to be truly remorseful and wanted to make it up to you. And that made you feel good. It made you feel like he really loved you. So now your brain has intertwined pizza with love. And every time you eat pizza, you get to relive that nice feeling of being loved, right? And that makes those bad feelings that you're having go away. But going into such a step-by-step analysis simply isn't feasible. For starters, a lot of the times you don't even have conscious access to many of those memories, either because you're too young or because the memories were so painful that they had to be suppressed for our own sake. So you may not even consciously remember the incident of being beaten with a hockey stick and then being fed pizza afterwards. Furthermore, it would take too much time and thinking, which in a truly threatening situation could mean the difference between life and death, literally. So the mind expedites and streamlines the process, bypassing all those steps in the middle, because it wants to go from point A, which is the problem, straight to point B, which is the solution, in order to restore our balance. And it knows that as long as you get pizza, everything will be okay. And how does your unconscious mind communicate this to you? Well, it's not going to slide into your DMs. Instead, it's going to access the file from your brain that holds the memory of the taste and the smell of pizza, arousing your appetite. And just like that, a craving is born. And you'll find that the scarier the perceived threat is, the more intense and urgent the craving will be. Now, one of the questions that I was asked earlier is, why is it that, people can stick to fruit during the day and be okay, but in the evening, their cravings kick up and they start jonesing for cooked food or maybe for salty food? Well, it's very simple, really, because during the day you're busy, you're doing stuff. And that tends to drown out those voices inside that keep reminding you what a worthless piece of what you are. But at night, when you get off work and things slow down, you now have time to think. And thinking always results in feelings. Of course, 99.99999% of the time, when we are in our head, do we go to good memories or the bad ones? The bad ones, of course, because they keep us safe. So we basically set ourselves up every time we get into our head and take a walk down memory lane and start thinking about all the ways that we've been hurt. In this way, we end up triggering ourselves more and worse than anybody else. It's important to become aware how you're doing this and to identify your triggers if you want to stay in control instead of letting your negative mind run the show. Because, as I said, these triggers may not be so obvious. For example, excitement, joy, and leisure time are some of my triggers. Now, you might think, well, that doesn't make sense because both excitement and leisure are good things, right? Well, if you grew up in my family, then you would see it differently. See, instead of treating me as a human being, my parents essentially treated me like an appliance. For instance, my mother never spoke to me as if I were a person. She never told me she loved me. We never casually chatted about the weather or maybe discussed a book or how things were going in school. Her interactions with me were limited to basically barking orders at me or berating me for the unforgivable mistake of being born. My whole life revolved around school and doing work, be it cleaning, cooking, ironing, gardening, laundry, you name it. If I was ever seen idling, I'd get abused for being useless. And then I'd be given more work. And if there was no more work left to do, my mother would create some for me. Oh, so you finished your chores and your homework? Then go clean out the garage or the basement. And if I had gotten that done, then she would make me take all of the dishes and utensils and china out of all of the cupboards in the kitchen, and she would make me rewash them one by one and then hand dry them and put them back. So growing up, for me, there were no breaks, there were no holidays, there were no weekends. So anytime now I would find myself with nothing to do, which is where normal people look to pleasurable activities like reading or playing or maybe hanging out with friends, I would get extremely anxious. And I would frantically start to look for things to do, something productive, something that, mother would approve of. Because if I wasn't doing some sort of work, I was in trouble. In other words, the only way I could justify my existence was by providing some sort of value, thus earning my keep through manual labor. Outside of that, I wasn't allowed to have dreams, desires, or aspirations. I wasn't allowed to have opinions, and I certainly wasn't allowed to express them. My mother would say that if she wanted my opinion, she would have given it to me. And I also wasn't allowed to have any pleasure. And what I mean by this is that I was not allowed to have friends or to participate in social activities like the drama club or the debate club. So I was basically like a vacuum cleaner, where my purpose only revolved around doing a job. And outside of that, I was to be kept in the closet, where I should not be seen or heard. I remember one time I was playing tag with my younger brother, and we were chasing each other around the living room furniture as if it were sort of like an obstacle course. And of course, as kids do, we were making noise and we were laughing and we were just horsing around. Well, we both got the living daylights beat out of us for acting out of turn. So now, anytime I find myself in a state of excitement or fun, I get triggered. My unconscious mind comes up from behind, like, like Whoopi Goldberg in that movie Ghost, saying, Ivana, you're in danger, girl. Because having these nice feelings wasn't safe. Instead, it produced a very painful outcome for me. Now, that being said, for all of her many faults, my mother is a great cook and baker. So the only joy and pleasure I did have access to in childhood was food. I'm sure you can connect the dots and work out what that means in terms of my coping mechanisms. As I start to work on my feelings and paying more attention to my internal state, I noticed that anytime I had nothing to do, I would start to feel an impending sense of dread. It would feel like I was doing something wrong and I was about to be caught. I would literally get heart palpitations as I was anticipating some sort of punishment to come down on me. And a similar thing would happen when things got exciting, like after I had landed a great new client, or maybe while I was writing and downloading great information from that effortless state of creative flow. All of a sudden, I would get agitated and anxious, and I would stop. I would literally stop what I was doing and withdraw. I'd get on my phone and start looking at Facebook and Instagram, and I would be gone for hours doing that. So it was either that, or I'd start thinking about eating something. Oh, what could I eat? So obviously, such responses are illogical and irrational. But if you put it in the context of my personal experience, then it totally makes sense. So as you can see, even positive things can trigger unhealthy coping mechanisms in us. Because for one reason or another, we have come to define these positive or neutral things as bad. And so this is the connection between our emotions, beliefs, and definitions. Our emotions are the result of the programming that informs our decisions. It doesn't necessarily mean that our definitions are true or correct. Nevertheless, we have adopted them as our operating system that faithfully generates emotions, which then drive our actions. But there's actually good reason behind this madness, because by our very nature, we don't do anything unless we believe that it benefits us in some way. Now, notice I didn't say that it actually benefits us, but that we believe that it does. There's a big difference. For example, when I get excited because something good is happening and my sympathetic nervous system kicks into high gear, initiating the fight or flight mode, it's not because it's malfunctioning, but because it's trying to protect me from my violent mother. So it's not about fighting the unconscious mind, which is, by the way, very rational. It's about updating the information that it has to work with. You see, that old defense mechanism was the best it could come up with 30 some years ago, when I was still living in my mother's house, where she was a constant threat to me. But now that I haven't seen or spoken with her in something like 15 years, the defense is no longer valid. So it needs to be revised and updated. And our unconscious mind responds very well to logic and reason. So if you're having negative feelings, there are a couple of things you can do to bring yourself back into the state of balance. First, ask yourself, what would I have to believe about myself, the situation I'm dealing with, or my relationship to it, in order to feel the way I feel? And then you look at whether the explanation that you come up with is actually plausible or rational. And spoiler alert, it usually isn't. But the beautiful thing is that as soon as we realize that our interpretation is nonsensical, it's actually very easy to disengage and let those beliefs go. There's another really simple yet incredibly profound mindfulness exercise that I learned from Bashar. When dealing with negative or uncomfortable feelings, run them through these 3 statements. So, first statement, I feel blank. And you can insert whatever emotion you feel. I feel sad, I feel angry, I feel frustrated. For the sake of this demonstration, I'm going to use angry. So you say, all right, I feel angry. Now, the second statement, you say, I feel angry because I choose to. Whoa, wait a minute. This is very important because remember, emotions aren't just thrust upon us out of nowhere and for no reason. Emotions are the direct result of our mind. The thoughts we think make us feel things. So if we are having bad feelings, it's because we are perpetuating those thoughts, which means that ultimately we're the only ones responsible for keeping those feelings alive. No one else. Nobody else is doing this to us. And since we are the ones creating these feelings, we are also the ones that can put a stop to them. So while someone or something else may have originally triggered that feeling, it was ultimately our decision whether or not we chose to keep it. So to recap so far, 1, I feel angry. 2, I feel angry because I choose to. And finally, number 3, and I choose to feel angry because I believe that it serves me to. So now you have to take a look at how feeling angry could possibly benefit you. This is what's called the motivational or payoff mechanism. All our actions are geared toward generating what makes us feel good or what benefits us. We will always move away from that which we perceive as painful or uncomfortable, and we will always move towards that which we define as pleasurable or rewarding. This means that we don't do anything unless we believe that we're getting something out of it. And we do it because we view the resulting outcome as being positive or preferable. Now, It doesn't mean that these definitions are based on facts. They're nothing more than opinions based on our beliefs. So when you examine this motivational mechanism that drives you to continue to choose to feel angry, one of the two things is going to happen. One, either you're going to realize that recycling that particular emotion doesn't actually benefit you in any way, in which case it will be easy for you to drop it, or you're going to realize that you have a belief in place that erroneously defines holding on to this anger as being something good for you. But if you look at it closer, 9 times out of 10, it will become quite clear that it does not, which again will make it quite easy for you to let it go. And it's really important to release these feelings because holding on to negative emotions can literally make us physically ill. I recently read the story of Ricki Lake. I don't know if you know who that is. She used to be an American talk show host and a Broadway performer. And she has recently made public her struggles with hair loss. She said that she'd been losing her hair for more than 10 years. And she lived in a constant agony and shame, trying to hide it with wigs and extensions. And as I was reading this story in the waiting room, and of course, it's all written in the same font and size, the word shame jumped out at me. And to me, it actually appeared to be like 5 times larger than the rest of the words, even though, of course, that wasn't factually so. But it was how I perceived it. And when I saw that word, my heart stopped. You know, I started to have like physical reactions. Blood surged into my head. I started to get palpitations. It was as if someone had drove a stake through my heart. Now, I remembered that my mother always hated my hair because she thought that it was too fine. So she would actually shave my head because she believed that that would thicken it. And when the shaving finally stopped, somewhere around 3 or 4 years old, then she would continue to cut my hair really, really short. And she would never allow me to grow it out. You know, if I would beg and she'd say, grow what out? Your hair is so shitty, there's nothing there to grow. So I absolutely hated having short hair because I thought that I looked like a boy and that I looked ugly. So as I read Ricki's story, all of those memories and the shame and the self-loathing just came crashing down on me. And that moment, it finally clicked that much of my hair problem was really just a manifestation of that internalized shame. And I'm not talking just about hair shame specifically, but overall general toxic shame that stems from years of consistent bullying, humiliation, and physical and emotional abuse. But to get back to Ricki's story, what ended up happening is that after 12 years of suffering in this painful shame, in January 2020, she decided to come out with it to the public, to the world, and she publicly shaved her head just so that she could finally be done with it, be done with the torture. Well, guess what happened? Once she came out of hiding and made her shame public, it no longer had a hold on her. And within a year, she grew all of her hair back. Now, she did mention finding a specific hair product that she says helped her, but I'm sure that in 12 years prior to that, she had tried hundreds of hair growth products and none of them worked until she finally let go of the need to have hair, because that was something for her that she derived her value and self-esteem from. So what I'm realizing is that by shedding hair, my body was constantly reminding me of the shame that I've been carrying and that I still had not let go. Now, it's important to underscore that even though emotions manifest in the body, they're not actually held there. I know that the common belief is that we store emotions in our body, but that is not technically so. Let me explain. Let's say that a major trauma happened to me when I was 6 years old. And for the sake of the argument, let's pretend that, yes, it did get stored in my body. Well, if you look at me now, do I still have my 6-year-old body? No. So the body that original trauma was imprinted on no longer exists. I think you can all agree that I have a completely different body now than I did at 6. Yet I am still being affected by that traumatic event that theoretically should have stayed in the 6-year-old body. So how did that trauma migrate into my new adult body? Well, it didn't, because pain, trauma, and disease aren't held in the body, they're held in our consciousness. And consciousness, of course, works through the body. Every single moment, the state of our consciousness is reflected in our physical form. Therefore, it's not the body that we need to change, because that process is automatic. It's our consciousness that needs to shift, because that is where we store our memories and experiences that are then expressed through the physical structure. The reason that our health issues seem to be chronic, ongoing, and unrelenting is that we hold on to the beliefs and definitions and memories that are out of integrity with our ideal blueprint. Because consciousness is like a blueprint for a house. If our floor plan isn't to code or it's not the right scale, you're going to end up with a wonky house. And when we keep operating within the same belief systems and definitions, we continue to use the same faulty blueprint, thus recreating the same exact problems. By repeating the same patterns of thought, belief, and story that we have told about ourselves, all of that creates the illusion of continuity, believing that illness is the property of the body when in reality, it's a reflection of our consciousness. So it's the mind that needs to change, not the body. Another thing that trips us up is the belief that we are the product of a certain and fixed past, or a series of moments that added up to our current circumstance. But is this really so? Quantum physics tells us that all matter is governed by the probability function. This means that a particle exists in all states simultaneously until it is measured or observed. But think about what that means. Existing in all states, by definition, means that its past, present, and future states, as well as all of their probable variations, are existing simultaneously and concurrently within the quantum field of probabilities, until we, as the primary observer, decide to choose one of those states and focus on it exclusively, thus making it our primary reality. The reason we can only observe a single thread at a time is that our physical sensory apparatus can only maintain one line of focus without getting confused or overwhelmed. But just because we can't perceive something, it doesn't mean that it's not real or that it's not happening. For instance, we can't perceive infrared light and certain sound frequencies, but we know that they're real because we have instruments or animals that do detect them. I'm sure you all heard of a dog whistle. So probability function tells us a couple of things. One, what we think of as the past or the future, and we think of them as something that either no longer exists or something that is yet to exist, all of these states are coexisting together with our present as equally real and tangible realities. And second, there are many versions of the same event that, can be either slightly or significantly different from the one that we have accepted as our official version. So if you're sick in this version of reality, I assure you that there is an alternate reality that's being experienced by a different version of you that is completely healthy. And that person is not imaginary or any less real than you are. This means that we are not relegated to one fixed version of what we perceive as our relative past. And we can actually choose different versions of it, thus changing both our present and future. And one way to do this is by going back into the memories of past traumatic events and bringing the emotions associated with them into focus. And when we do that, then we can go back and change those events into what we wish had happened rather than holding on to what we remember happening. This is something I do with clients when we do inner child work. And I take them to revisit their past self when they're in a different or in a difficult situation. And then the adult self will provide assistance, help, love, comfort, whatever the child needs to change the outcome of that situation. Now, this technique can be even more profoundly effective if you combine it with tapping. Of course, you might say that this is all theoretical hooey and that it's not how real life works because we perceive time as a series of sequential moments happening one after another. But perception isn't reality despite the saying that claims otherwise. For instance, you're now sitting in a chair, on a bunch of chairs, because there's a bunch of you, that seem quite solid to you. But the truth of the matter is that the chair you're sitting on is mostly empty space, because we know for a fact that seemingly solid objects are actually made up of tiny particles vibrating at huge distances relative to each other. Not only that, but you're not even sitting on a chair. Think about it. If the chair is mostly empty space, then why don't we fall through it? What's really happening is that the electrons of the chair are repelling the charge of the electrons that our body is made of. So in actuality, you're not even touching the particles of the chair, but instead you are levitating on an electrostatic field that's been generated by this repulsion of the electrons of the chair and our body. So why am I bringing this up? Because understanding how things work, how they really work instead of how they appear, allows us to manipulate our reality to our advantage. So if you are an alcoholic or a food addict, because you were abused as a child and you have adopted unhealthy coping mechanisms as a result of that abuse in order to survive, you don't have to continue to choose that past. You can now choose a different version of your childhood that doesn't involve abuse, and then hardwire it into your nervous system with the help of tapping, so that you no longer have that primary programming that's consistent with being abused and that triggers you to abuse your body. By the way, I hope you can see the connection here. You start out with someone else abusing you first, but then you carry on with it, except now you're abusing yourself, whether it's with food, alcohol, drugs, or whatever. And you're doing all of that just to punish yourself for not being good enough. Now, you don't even have to think about it in terms of changing your actual history or past, because it's not what happened that triggers us, it's the memory of what happened that we've been holding in our consciousness and replaying over and over again. So the idea is that if you change that memory, then there's nothing left there to trigger you. Now, so if you find yourself in a situation where you're triggered, your first priority should be to snap out of that norepinephrine-induced trance. The first thing you have to do is change how you're feeling. You want to move yourself from the state of agitation into a relaxed state. And one way you can do this is through eye movement. This is called EMDR. So this is very simple. You want to be either looking straight or a little bit upward, and you may choose 2 points, and all you do is you move your eyes left to right, left to right, left to right, while keeping your head steady. What this does is it synchronizes both hemispheres of the brain, and it snaps you out of that trance state. So now you're present again. So now you can make choices and decisions. Now your conscious mind can be in charge. And of course, tapping is a phenomenal tool, and there are so many different ways to tap, and there's so many ways that are really easy. And that could be something we talk about at another time, because it's a sort of big topic. But something you could do very easily and quickly to tap in the moment. It literally takes less than a minute. If you are in a state of shock, if you're in a state of grief, if you're having anxiety, you see here, this is the gamut point where the joints separate. There's a soft spot here. Now, so you would start tapping on the gamut point, and then the first thing you do, you tap with your eyes closed, and you're going to do this very quickly. Then you tap with the eyes open. Then you're going to look down and tap. Then you're going to go hard right, but only moving your eyes. Then you're going to go hard left. Then you're going to move your eyes in a clockwise position. Then you're going to move your eyes in counterclockwise direction. Then you're going to hum a little song for a few seconds. Na, 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 na. Then you're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then once again, you hum a song. Na, 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 na. So what happens is that when we are switching between these right and left brain activities, what it does is it actually stabilizes the brain, and it takes us out of that fight or flight mode. So this is just a very simple and quick thing that you can do anywhere and anytime, and really change how you feel. Do you have any questions, guys?
I do.
All right.
Okay, it was very touching, moving what you told us. But why? That's
Why?
also, why do parents act like that to children? Why
They
does it?
remember what I said. You're going to treat yourself the way your parents treated you, and you're going to treat other people the way your parents treated you. You know that saying, love yourself, or love your neighbor as you love yourself. Well, what happens is that we do love others the way we love ourselves. So what happened, their parents or somebody else did it to them. You understand? So they just took on that mechanism, they just carried it over. Because, for example, my mother used to shame me, but what she did, it wasn't about me. She was dumping her shame onto me because she didn't want to carry it. So she would project it onto me. And it was all about, I cannot embarrass them. You understand? It was the most important thing. We had to put up this perfect facade of a perfect family, even though it was complete hell living there. So, and our parents actually make us carry their shame. That's abusive, but they're not doing it because it's intentional. They just don't know any better. My mother abused me because somebody abused her, and she never dealt with her stuff. So now she has all this rage inside her, and she keeps reliving those memories. And she looks at a child who looks very much like her, and that self-loathing is stirred. So now she's beating the kid, but who she's really beating is herself. That's who she wants to beat up. You understand?
But isn't she aware of what she's doing? I mean, can't she see that she's abusing her own child?
Yes, but remember what I just said. When you are in that space, you are in a trance. And when I think about it, it's true. It's like she wasn't seeing things. Like rage would come over, like true rage, and she just starts swinging and punching and kicking. You understand? She wasn't in her body, because this is what happens. You get triggered, and that's an automatic response. Because nobody ever told her that, one, this was wrong, and two, there's something you can do about it, and something you should do about it.
But you said that she was aware at a certain point, I mean, at a certain level, because she only did it to you at home when nobody saw. But to others, she knew how to.
Oh, that's not true. Oh, no, not at all. Oh, no, 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 no. My parents would like to put on a show. You understand? And humiliate you in front of other people. Tell everybody else. You understand? No, it wasn't like that. But it was to a point. Like, for example, if there was, like, I would always be black and blue. And what my mother would say when I would go to school, well, if I were you, I wouldn't tell people how you got that, because then they'll know just how stupid you are. You understand? So now as an adult, I look at her more like from the clinical point of view. She most of the time she wasn't there.
Like she didn't try to hide it from other people. Like she would like she wouldn't do that to you in front of other people. Would she humiliate you and beat you in front of other people?
Absolutely, absolutely. Oh. And she would feel proud about that. Like, see how good a parent I am. Like, you have to be sick in the head. You can't be normal. You understand? So I've accepted this. This has to be some sort of mental illness.
Yeah, because I know that there are parents that sort of they have to show in front of others, but they beat the children when others don't see it. So they can tell the difference between they are ashamed of it. They know there's something wrong about it. I mean, people that are not rational, well, they can't tell they can't tell the difference, and they would do it in front of other people. But a lot of people know that there's something wrong with it and only beat their children and humiliate their children when no one sees. And then in front of other people, they would be very nice and polite. And that's what I'm saying.
That wasn't my experience. It was a mixed bag. It depended on how she was feeling, and she was highly unstable, unpredictable. Every day I lived in a state of terror, just anticipating, expecting.
Sometimes it can also be that the parents are not guilty about it. They do it. Um, um, they do it when the things alone and not in a group or not outside, because they are guilty of their actions. But some parents are not guilty of their actions and think it is their right to do it, and that is the right thing to do it, and they are proud of it. They think that
Yes,
that's a sign of being a good parent.
it's exactly the case. That was the case with me. There was a time, and my transgression was, we were visiting with the family friends, and they had a big cherry tree that was in blossoms, and it was really, really beautiful. And and the cherry tree, of course, then would bear cherry fruit. And I was so enthralled by the cherry blossoms that I broke off a branch of it. I wanted to have it. Oh my God, that was just the worst thing I could have done. So what had happened was that my father made me go and get a switch and bring it, and then he whipped me in front of the people whose cherry tree I got the branch off of, because he wanted to show them how good a parent he was, how he taught me a lesson to never do that again.
Yeah, you know what I hear? Today, children are very spoiled. So I heard somebody saying that now everybody's gone the other way around. Like parents used to be very, our generation, our parents used to be very strict and very beat us and humiliated us. And now parents are too soft on their children and the children are too spoiled. So that's also not good. Because today, I don't think it's not the same. The society is changing. Parents today are not are different from parents from their parents. So it's also that now they're too soft and too permitting and no authority and no lines. And today, a lot of children are very spoiled because of that. So
Well, the problem is that nobody teaches you how to be a parent. Like, you need to have more education to obtain a driver's license. You actually have to take a test to be able to drive a car on public roads. But anybody can be a parent. You understand? There's no
Yes,
test, there's no education how to be a parent. So everybody does what their parents did.
Okay, so I asked you why is there so much misery? Why are there so many bad parents? Why is that? I mean,
because they had bad parents. It's as simple as that.
I'm asking myself, are there any normal parents? Are there any normal families?
Sure. I mean, it's a matter of degree. Nobody comes out unscathed. You understand? Even let's look at a really loving family situation. A child is crying, right? And what does a parent do? Instead of being there with a child, here's a cookie, here's a toy. What is the kid is gonna understand? That, oh, when I feel bad, I need to eat, or I need to go buy something, get a new toy. You understand?
So it's not just about abusing, it's about even these.
No. It's just not understanding how to deal with emotions. Oh, a child is crying. Also, we must do everything in our power to stop the child. The child is having an emotional experience. So what you need to do is level with the child. One, you have to be face to face, not over them, looming, be threatening. And you're there, say, oh, you're crying. Tell me what is the reason you're crying? What can I do for you? How can I be there for you? Or they do the opposite thing. There's the school of thought that if a child cries, you just leave them alone, you let them cry it out. That child is now abandoned. The child did not have anybody there for them when they were having a crisis. So that's not good either. You understand? The point is that parenting is extremely difficult.
That's
And
right.
people, it's so difficult that people want to make shortcuts. It's hard to deal with a kid that's crying when you're losing your mind and you haven't slept in days. And it triggers everything in you, right? So you just want it to stop. So you do the best you can. And the problem is that we are generally not well people. And when people are not well and they have children, those children are not going to be well. That's the bottom line. So
it's
don't have children until you sort yourself out.
What is it? I missed that. What did you say?
I said, don't have children until you sort yourself out.
That's right. Just like a good psychiatrist, he has to take care of his stuff before he can is able to treat others and deal. Otherwise, he's projecting his own stuff on his patients.
So there are different levels of abuse, because a woman having a child because she wants somebody to love her unconditionally, that's abusive, because you are using the child to fill your unmet needs. So the child cannot be him or herself. The child now has to cater to mom and be there for her, be her surrogate husband or her surrogate girlfriend, whatever it is. So now child has a job. The child cannot just be a child. The child has to take care of mom's emotional needs. So mom may be very loving and give everything to the child, but still abusive. You understand? So there are different levels here.
Right, I understand. And especially, people have children when they're themselves young. It's not like they're experienced and have a lot of wisdom. They're young themselves. They're struggling with survival, with other problems. And yes, I think that they're not even, they're not ready for it. And they're not aware of the responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of the child. You don't have children after you're settled, financially, emotionally. You have children at a very young age when you're yourself, in a way, are a child, still have a lot of unresolved issues. Yeah. So, yeah, and you don't need a license to be a parent.
Yeah. One thing I forgot to mention that has to do with fasting and epinephrine, and why people may have more severe cravings while they're fasting. This is more likely to happen for those who don't feel secure in fasting, like they have fears about it, because now you're creating stress. So now you're looking at yourself, oh my God, I'm losing too much weight, right? So to begin with, your body's already pumping out a ton of norepinephrine, adrenaline, because adrenaline is what signals to the liver to go and get glycogen. And when you're fasting, there's no food. So the body starts to pump out norepinephrine because it's thinking, maybe we're not sending enough signal to the liver to get food. And it's not that we're not sending that signal, it's just liver can't get what it doesn't have because we're fasting. So now you have dual stress. So first stress is purely physiological. That excess epinephrine is going to give you headaches, can raise your heart rate very high. It can make you feel dizzy, faint, give you anxiety. But then you have the emotional anxiety about the fast itself. And this is why then you turn on that fight or flight that now makes you crave things so that you stop, that you get the body out of danger. And that's why I always tell people, if you have any fears or reservations, don't do it. You will harm your body more because now you're adding stress to it. So
it's a combination.
Yes. And that's why you may have more cravings. And that's why I find that I don't really have cravings, because first of all, I go in and I'm very happy to be there. But second, I don't go, it's like, oh, it's a craving where we're not gonna eat. I'm not worried that I am starving my body. Like for some people, it's a big fear. People ask me, oh, maybe I'm too thin to fast. So they're already coming in and they're stressing themselves out. So the body now responds to that stress on top of the physiological stress. And by the way, this is why we can't sleep when we're fasting, because that norepinephrine starts to pump so much, that adrenaline, it doesn't shut off, and that's why we can't sleep.
Thank you. That's very fascinating. You sharing your life story with us, and
it wasn't easy for me. I thought about it long and hard. I was like, do I want to do this? But you got to deal with the shame. The best disinfectant is sunlight. If, shining a light on it is what frees you.
I don't know. It seems like it's not unique to you. That's what I'm saying. I identify with it. I don't know about others, but I've heard it a lot. Like it keeps repeating itself. Like it's not like it's personal. It's like, I don't know. It's happened to a lot of people. That's what I'm saying. Maybe certain generations, certain education, the society was more rigid, strict. I don't know. There's something universal about these experiences. So
What's universal is the lack of love, because it all stems from absolute lack of love. Self-love, really.
So it's like
you can't love somebody else if you don't know how to love. If you do not know how to love yourself, how are you going to know how to love somebody else? It's a skill.
It's a tragedy. I mean, a lot of people. I mean, there's a lot of suffering, a lot of pain, a lot of people. I don't know. They lack love and they pass it on. They themselves don't love others, and it just doesn't end. How's it going to end?
With us, you have to make a choice, a decision. We are doing it.
To be aware and to stop, put an end to it. To consciously put an end to it. Be aware of it and deal with it and solve it and change
Yeah. Okay, guys, who else wants to ask questions, comments?
Arik, I would like to answer one.
Hi.
My Shishma. And yeah, I stopped my fast today because I emotionally disturbed today, because I just find out that I losing my hair, had some patches on my head, and about the job, because it's been locked down for a long time. I work at the airport, and my shop is closed, and they're doing the redundancy. So I was a bit worried because we just had the meeting. So how can we come out of these emotions and just then I just come to the food only to comfort myself?
Tapping. You heard Jordan talk
yeah,
about
I did.
but there are very easy ways to do it. Like a lot of people stay away from tapping because they feel they don't know how to do it. It becomes complicated. I have to come up with a recipe. I have to tap here. I have to tap there. It really doesn't matter. What it does is that, one, you have these meridians that are actually connected to your organs. This is your gallbladder on the eyebrow. This is your bladder. This is your stomach. These are not organ meridians. These are your kidneys. Underarm, you have your spleen. Your liver is here, right? This is, your wrist has two sides to it. So you should ideally be tapping on both sides. This is your heart, lungs, circulation, and large intestine. Side of the hand is small intestine. So you can actually stimulate your organs to work better. And this is actually how this worked for me. But you have to do it every single day. But the idea is that when tapping should be done in the heat of the moment, because this is when the stuff comes up. And there is a method that was developed by Robert Smith that's called short EFT. Is it short EFT? where he condensed it, where he only taps on 4 or 5 points. And it's very, very simple. So you have a feeling. What you do, you identify the feeling. You go, how strongly do I feel this feeling? You gauge that. And then you start tapping and you just say, I'm letting it go, letting it all go. It's okay for me to let it go. I let it go. And then you go, you grab your wrist, the 2 points, and then you go, you exhale and you said, peace. After you do that, you check again. How are you feeling? Have you reduced the intensity? And you keep going until you have reduced the intensity. And just doing these few points is going to do it for you. You don't have to do all of that. You don't have to set up, I feel this way. Another problem people have with tapping is that they have to say, I love and accept myself fully. A lot of people have a problem with that because they don't love themselves. And they can't even say it to themselves. Or it feels phony. It doesn't feel authentic. So they go, oh, this is not going to work. You understand? So the words don't matter. The words are there for one reason only, to bring the feeling up to the surface. But the trick is that once you bring the feeling up, you don't stay in it. You understand? You remove yourself. You want to, because when you're in that feeling, you are in a trance. And you don't want to, you want to break the trance, and then you tap on it, letting it go. It's okay for me to let it go. I am okay. I am safe. Peace. And you keep going. But once you have brought the intensity down, preferably to a 0, now you have to put something in place of that memory. You understand? You have to replace it with something positive. You don't leave it there. So first you tap it out, you remove that intensity, right? And then you put something else. So you have to, ideally you should have a journal where you have your bad memories and you have your good memories, because you want to have a library of these things so that when you are tapping, you have a memory ready to go to, where you're feeling good, you're feeling peaceful, you're feeling happy, to insert it there. Okay?
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, Ivanna.
Hi.
Sorry, I'm not sure if the previous question is done. I'll pause.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. You can carry on. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Ivanna, this is Ruchi. I'm the one who had texted you without name. Yeah. So I think you already answered. So my one question was regarding the hormonal imbalance that we, or maybe overflow that we deal with when having period, or like a week before that. I assume tapping would do the magic for that as well.
Can you tell me what the problem is?
So with me, a week before my period, right, it has gotten better, but still, like, there is a feeling of irritation that I would sense about a week or 10 days before.
But I was talking emotional irritation or physical irritation?
Emotional.
All right. So that's a hormonal balance. But the more you clean out your body, all of that's going to go away.
Okay.
It's a matter of clean, and that's actually, that area is easy to clean because it's close to the kidneys. So that should get fast, and you can do douches and you can do other things to get that cleaned out.
Sorry, what is?
Stay raw. What I'm saying, first of all, raw diet is going to fix it sooner or later. But you can use Hilal tea. You can use herbal teas to douche and pull mucus out to clean things up.
Ivanna, she did a 21-day orange juice fast. After that, she did 2 weeks apple juice fast. And yesterday she did liver flush, where she removed about 100 stones.
Who is this?
I'm Hetal.
So this is about you?
No, it's about her, but I was guiding her.
Oh, okay. All right. So you have to say it's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. These things take time, and you just have to keep going. I promise you, this is going to get resolved.
So I mean, I have been on a raw diet for a while as well. I mean, a year, I guess.
What is a
while
long?
is just a year.
Listen, it took me almost 4 years to get mucus out of my sinuses, and I fast long periods of time. So it's all relative. You got, people have these expectations. What's going to happen? That things are going to start to get progressively less bad, and then they start to get good. But until you get stuff out, now in terms of irritation, like I would have to see your pituitary, your hypothalamus. I would have to see, your adrenal glands and stuff like that.
Adrenal glands are weak.
Okay, but what about hypothalamus and pituitary? Because hypothalamus.
Yeah, she has thyroid problems.
But again, pituitary takes care of thyroid. We're talking about hypothalamus. Hypothalamus signals the pituitary, and pituitary then signals to your thyroid, your adrenals, your parathyroid. It takes care of everything else. So a lot of the times that when we have, menstrual issues are usually connected to the pituitary gland. But if you are irritated, you can take herbs such as lemon balm, skullcap, what else? Hops flowers, really soothing and calming. And these are high serotonin herbs. And also for you, take Vitex. Now, Vitex is a pituitary herb, and it's a female reproductive herb. And that's going to help you a great deal. Vitex is also known as chasteberry.
And these I take as tinctures or herbal teas, or how capsules?
It depends on your digestion. If your digestion is poor, then you take a tincture. Because if your digestion is poor, you're not going to digest the capsule, unfortunately, even though the capsule is stronger, right? Teas are the weakest. So, but between tinctures and capsules, capsules, of course, are stronger, or powdered herbs. They don't have to be in a capsule. You can buy them in bulk. But if you don't have digestion, absorption, utilization, you're not going to get much out of it. But an alcohol tincture is going to get that herb into your system very quickly. It's a little different with the glycerin tincture, because that takes a little more digestion, right? That takes pancreatic digestion and stuff like that. So, and glycerins are actually also weaker than alcohol tinctures, right? They don't pull as much good stuff out of the herb. So it all depends on your personal situation.
So I don't think I have digestion issues. I mean, so I think you're suggesting I can take capsules.
Well, there's also absorption and utilization. There are 3 different stages before we get to elimination. So digestion happens in the stomach, right? And in the small intestines, where we need either stomach acid, or we need bile, or we need pancreatic enzymes. If you have problematic pancreas, do you ever get gas or bloating after you eat fats or fruits, vegetables, anything like that? Do you ever feel like food is sitting around in your stomach for a long period of time?
No.
Do you see undigested food particles in your stool?
No.
All right, so you're good with digestion. Second question is elimination. So that's another thing you have to, absorption. If the wall of your small intestine is backed up with lymph, it doesn't matter that you've digested your stuff. It doesn't get through where it needs to go. Now, let's say you do have fairly decent absorption, and most people have at least some degree of malabsorption. It's not enough for you just to absorb stuff. Now you have to utilize it. And for this, you need steroids. You need hormones to do that. And if you don't have adequate hormones, that your body cannot utilize that chemistry, even though you've digested and absorbed it, it can't do anything with it. So it all depends.
Okay. So what is the next step? I mean, how do I figure out what form I should take it in?
If you're digesting, that you're fine, but you should also be getting your glands up. The fact that you're having issues with your period tells me right there your pituitary is not working well. And if your pituitary is not working well, your thyroid's not going to be working well, your adrenals will not be working well. Because and parathyroid, because That's what it controls. It controls all of those glands. But it may not be your pituitary. It could be the hypothalamus, because hypothalamus is the government of the pituitary. It stimulates pituitary to act. And if your hypothalamus is not working properly, that pituitary is getting no orders from anybody. So it's just sitting around doing nothing. So pituitary may not be the issue. And the only way you can see this is by looking in somebody's eyes, where you can really see the state of their glands. And I cannot make recommendations for people unless I have seen their eyes, because I have to see if this is hypothalamus, if this is pituitary, if this is just the adrenal, or all of them together. You know, so because you're going to do the wrong thing, you're going to overstimulate the gland that doesn't need to be overstimulated.
Got it.
Because if the gland is fine, it's just not getting the message that it needs to do stuff. Now you're giving it herbs or you're giving it glandulars, you're overstimulating. You're making it hyperactive. And you don't want that. So you have to see what the glands are like. So that's why I cannot make recommendations unless I've seen somebody's eyes.
Okay.
Because you can do the wrong thing. You understand, you can push yourself in the wrong direction.
Understood.
Anything
Okay,
else?
so we'll connect offline.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
One more thing I just want to ask.
Yeah.
So do you give me any suggestion why I losing my hair? Because I see I do the yoga, I do the pranayama, I'm having healthy food, and then suddenly, and I make coconut oil with a little bit herbal, and I'm doing everything. Suddenly, this month, I just found that I have big patch hair underneath hair. And
well, when it comes out in patches like that, that's alopecia areata, and that is usually connected to nerves and stress. All right. So, but when you say your diet is healthy, what does that mean? What are you actually eating?
Pure vegetarian. So we have lots of.
You're eating cooked vegetarian. You're eating rice, and you're eating. See, that's
I stopped 1 month, no rice, no chapati, just making soup or boiled vegetable or fruit or lentils.
So you have to get off. You have to get off of cooked food. Cooked food does not detox or heal anybody. First of all, cooked food has zero energy. It has no vitality. It has no nutrition. Once you cooked something, you have destroyed its water solubles. But what you also did, the minerals are first get broken up by the heat, and then they get rebonded into cationic bonds. Now, once they get rebonded like that, they cannot bond to anything else in your body. So they're absolutely not usable. So you're eating food that has zero nutritional value in it, has zero life. All right. Now, when we eat food, what we get from it is actually not calories or vitamins. What we get is energy. Think about your cells. Your cells work on electricity. So you have a cell that needs a certain amount of voltage for it to continue to function optimally, right? So the food that comes in has to have at least that amount of electricity. So you're bringing cooked food has zero electricity. It cannot sustain that cell. You understand? Now, the problem is even worse if your cell is damaged. So now it's no longer operating in its peak ability. So even if you bring the right amount to keep a healthy cell functioning, it's not going to be enough for a cell that's been damaged, you see? And this is why raw diet, even not raw vegetables, again, do not detox. They detox you to an extent because your nerve cells require the highest amount of electricity, and vegetables simply don't have it. You can eat raw vegetables. They're great if you don't have any problems. But if you need to bring up the vitality in your body, to improve things, to heal things, vegetables are not the way to go. Heal your body and then eat vegetables till the cows come home. But to heal, they're not going to do it, especially if you have nerve damage, if you have weak nervous system. you're going to go nowhere. Now, for hair shedding, what worked for me is clay masks. You mix bentonite clay with clay, yes, bentonite clay with charcoal.
Okay.
All right, you mix it together. Now, I'm not a big fan of vinegar, but you need a little bit here because otherwise, or you'll just end up with really clumpy clay. But it also depends on the clay. Some clay is more absorbent, some is more viscous. It all depends on the clays. But you would mix it. You can add a few drops of essential oils, like clove oil and rosemary oils are known to regrow hair. But what you're doing, why people lose hair? Hair grows out of skin. When you have lymphatic congestion in your skin, when your skin is closed, it does not eliminate. The acids in the skin begin to break down hair follicles. So hair falls out. So what we're doing with clay is very simple, but it's very effective because clay has a pulling action to it. Now, when you mix it with charcoal, charcoal has an extremely high adsorbency area. Adsorbency is different than absorbency because what it does, it magnetizes things to itself and then it holds it. So you make this mask, you put it on your scalp. It has to touch, not hair, scalp, where it is, so that clay is going to pull stuff from the skin that your body cannot eliminate. Also, sometimes people cannot drain their head. They have a lot of lymph in their head, and they're even maybe, their kidneys are filtering, but if they have their transverse colon that's really backed up, they cannot drain the head. Or they may have a lot of lymph nodes here that are congested, that are creating a bottleneck effect where that lymph cannot get to the kidneys. So you have all this lymph sitting here, breaking down your hair follicles. So what you then do, then you use a topical detoxifier like clay, and you put it on your scalp. And depending on how bad your problem is, you can do this every other day until the hair shedding stops. So, I mean, it's a little bit messy. It's a little bit of a job, really, because you have to keep it on your scalp for at least 20 minutes to 30 minutes. But what it does, it starts to pull that stuff out and takes that pressure off your hair follicles. You understand? It cleans up the scalp. So if you can't drain it, and you can put it on your face anywhere where you have lymph nodes that are maybe swollen, that's gonna do it's gonna help to move things around. And what you also want to do is to ensure that you have enough circulation going to your head, because if your circulation is impaired, you're going to lose hair, because then not enough blood and oxygen and nutrients are going to the hair shaft and hair follicle.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And stress, you got to de-stress.
Stress, one of my biggest problem, my son, because he's 35, and since last lockdown in March, he stays in his room all the time. He come down to just have food and just stay, never talk, never say anything, just all the time in silence.
That's sad.
And sometimes I just wait in the kitchen to come and see him, because then I have to meditate and sit down, like what time he come to have tea and what time he have to come have dinner. And sometimes I go and ask him, what you like to eat, I can make for you, but I feel like why he's so bright, he have so much knowledge, and he done civil engineering in degree, but I don't know how I have to deal with that situation. So I done so much meditation. I go to Brahm Kumaris, I learn, it's been 12 years, and I do meditation, try to help, but at first I have to help myself to come out of these emotions. And I'm trying my best, but sometimes I get really deep.
Well, don't go too deep into the feeling of not feeling good. You understand? That's counterproductive. I mean, the best thing you can do is to follow your joy and excitement is the best your ability, because then he might see you being happy, and he might see that you know,
Yeah.
things, and he goes, oh, I want that too, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I try to involve him as soon he come down. Look, I'm making this. How would you like? And you can make it yourself. I will show you the recipe. We got that good opportunity that we are together now. So if you want to learn or anything, just let me know or come down and we can do it together. No, once I'm just busy upstairs. I'm doing something.
But this could also be a chemical imbalance.
Mm.
You understand? If his glands are down, his adrenals are down, he's not making happy neurotransmitters. This could very well be another thing. If he doesn't have enough serotonin and dopamine, he will be depressed.
Mm.
Ivana, I have one question.
Mhm.
After I had written to you and we talked,
Yeah.
it's much better. I don't have any headaches, but
Mhm.
still, I have a little runny nose every time I put something in my mouth. What does that runny nose indicate?
You're moving lymph.
Okay.
Now, as long as the food is raw, then it's because you can get a runny nose by drinking a glass of milk. You understand? Because
Yeah.
that stimulates your mucosa in a defensive way. But if
Okay.
you're drinking or consuming stuff that is astringent, this is gonna stimulate lymph to sort of soften that lymph and mobilize it. Then you're gonna have a runny nose, absolutely, and that's good. You want that stuff to come out.
Yeah.
You're not getting anything out that wasn't there to begin with, unless you are eating something that's creating new mucus. What color is the mucus?
It's watery. It's not
Right.
much, but
So that's acute. That is brand new stuff. That is, you're not getting any sort of deep healing, or that's not coming from old lymph.
yeah.
Are
It's
you
only
only
water coming out, but every time I put something, even if it's water, I get water comes out from the nose, that runny nose from the nose comes out immediately, and then there's nothing.
That's not, to me, this is a good thing. What
Okay.
you're doing is you're just starting to chip away at it. You're like right at the surface. uh, you can do neti pot.
Yeah.
All right, and you can do this with specific herbs like pleurisy root, or fenugreek, or you can mix all three, because these herbs, they break up mucus.
Okay.
So as you keep doing it, you're putting in herbs there that are sort of moving things around, so sort of breaking stuff up that's been agglomerated in there.
Okay. Because I feel very free. I can
Mhm.
breathe also very deep, so that's also not a problem. But every time I put water or juice in my mouth, immediately comes a runny nose, and then it's all clear. Then
That's
there is
good.
no stuff nose anywhere.
That's good, because to me, this is the lymph that's being mobilized through the channels that connect you to the stomach.
Okay.
Okay, because it's so quick, and so that juice that goes in, and even water, starts to activate things, right?
Yeah.
Starts to move things, because our lymphatic system, and by the way, if you have any problem, it's all lymphatic problem. There's
Yeah.
no such problem that's non-lymphatic. Your lymphatic system is 4 times larger than your blood system. It is literally around every cell. There's not one part of your body that is not being supplied and cleaned by the lymph. So it's not that only you have problems with your lymph if you have lymph node problems or lymph or lymph. No, any problem you have in your body is automatically a lymphatic problem. But our lymph system does not have the pumping mechanism, the circulatory mechanism that the blood does. You see, the heart is what pumps the blood, but lymph, the only way it moves, if we create movement ourselves. So the only way we move lymph is when we either partaking in physical activity, or we are taking deep breaths, because respiration also mobilizes lymph. Digestion, anything that creates manual movement, because when you are taking in food into your stomach goes to work, because stomach actually is a muscle that sort of manually crushes the food. So it's not just like sitting there and doing nothing and just the fluids do the work. No, stomach actually is a muscle. It works. So when you are putting water and juice in, stomach starts to move, and as it moves, lymph starts to move. You understand?
Yeah.
It's like when you have peristalsis and your bowels move, they contract through neurological action. This is how you also move lymph.
Okay.
And also lymph channels have really thin microscopic muscle filaments in them. So even those muscle filaments inside the lymphatic vessels are going to contract and try to move them. So this is why it's so important to move, especially when you're fasting, because if you don't move, your lymph does not move, period. Because the lymph does not have the same pumping mechanism as blood. So we have to move it manually, dry brushing, exercising, massages, stuff like that, deep breathing. Otherwise, it doesn't move. And if it doesn't move, you can't get it out because it just sits there, solidified.
Thank you.
Ivanna?
Yeah?
I have a question. Lots of people in my vicinity now are getting this COVID shot, new vaccine, which is based on triggering DNA, RNA. So I wanted to ask if you have any knowledge in case the person who got it wants to reverse the harmful effect of it in the future. Do you think it is even possible? Like, what's your opinion about that? By extended fasting, by other things? What do you think about it?
I don't know exactly the extent to which it alters RNA. I know that you can heal pretty much anything. I mean, we literally have genes in our DNA that can allow us to regrow limbs. You understand? They're just switched off. So in my opinion, there is no limit to what the body can do. The question is, can we create appropriate circumstances for the body to do that? I mean, look at the pollution. And we can't, like, even if our diet is pristine, how do we get away from all the pollution, from the chemicals, just the stuff that's in the air, in the water? It's horrible. Like one of the questions that I got through the group was the question about water. Which water do it? I don't know. She's asking, should I be drinking stream water? I don't know. I don't think you can find clean stream water anymore. Not in this, like, unless you have a good source that you have tested, like you went and you chemically tested, you're not taking just on faith that somebody else tells you this is a good source. I would not even recommend spring water, because you don't know where this water is coming from, what kind of pollution it's coming from. So it's hard because we live in such an unfortunate time that it's very difficult to avoid toxins. I mean, we had a report on the news that New York City subways have such bad air that they tested, it's scoring off the charts. Now, what do? You got to go to work. You got to do, what are you going to do? So it depends. It depends. I believe anything is possible, but it also depends on how weak genetically the person was to begin with, how well they move their lymph, if they actually are getting stuff out, or if they're just backing stuff up. You see, all of that makes a difference.
Okay.
Because if you have weak tissues, it's going to be very difficult to detox stuff out. But if you have strong tissues, it's very quick. You get stuff going.
Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, who else wants to ask anything before we wrap it up?
Well, let me see these questions that we got. Okay.
Yeah, whatever you find relevant, Ivana. You don't have to address everything if you like. You decide.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing about fasting and breathlessness, that depends on your adrenal function. The weaker your adrenals, the harder it will be for you to breathe.
Ivana,
Like,
maybe you could read the question because.
okay, is it, well, the way the question is posed, is it that everybody feel breathless during 10 plus days, hard dry fast? After a certain point, it's not like I don't feel breathless unless I need to exert myself. If I am calm, then I have no issues, zero issues. But if I have to like walk around, work out, exercise, then yes, my breathing is going to be more difficult, because as you are exerting yourself, your body needs neurotransmitters to do that. And your adrenals have to provide them. And if they're weak, and maybe they give you whatever they have, and by the time you're done, you're out of breath. But the important thing is, what really, 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 really helps your adrenals and breathing is cold air. If you are in a place that's hot, that's going to rob your adrenal glands of nerve energy, and you're going to feel weaker just because of that. You don't even have to do anything. And that's why it's harder for me to fast in the summer unless I have the air conditioner blasting all the time, because heat is very acidic, and it's hard on the adrenals. So it's going to make it harder for you. So if you have weak adrenals, make things as cold as possible. Or if you live in a cold climate right now, this is a great time to fast. Go out and take deep breaths, and it's like you come back to life. And also tapping. Here are your lungs. Okay? The wrist point. Your lungs are here. So tap.
Is it only the right hand or it's both?
Any hand, it doesn't matter. It's both.
Okay.
Also, this finger right here, the spot, this is also the lung in EFT. Okay? So this is your large intestine, lung, pericardium, and heart. So these are the spots, other spots you can hit on you. So this will stimulate the meridians. But the problem is with breathing on a fast, it's really not the lungs, it's that you don't have the neurotransmitters. Because breathing is an autonomic nervous system function, which is your adrenal glands, your medulla. So if you don't have enough neurotransmitters, you're going to have a problem breathing. But it doesn't mean, unless it gets bad. For me, like I said, unless I'm exerting myself. So if you maybe, modulate your activity level and get some cold air, it could help you, and you don't have to stop. All right, what else we got here?
Can I say something?
Sure.
Well, we must be pretty strong with all these toxins and also emotional toxins that we survive.
Well, the body is an amazing machine. I mean, it can take a beating, absolutely. Yeah.
Is we're bombarded all the time with all these toxins and also all the emotional issues. And how do we manage to survive? Maybe we work things out, we detox a little.
It's a choice. You have to educate yourself first. You have to know what the right thing is to do for the body, and then you take responsibility for it.
That's right. And I see many people that are unaware, that are ignorant, and like, yes, that they're overwhelmed, and eventually they just can't deal with things, and they just don't think logically. They just don't make rational decisions. They just influenced. They just, sort of can't deal with the situation.
But what you also have
overwhelmed.
to consider is that if a person has never felt well from the day they were born, you understand, they have no point of reference what it is to feel good and healthy. They just feel it's because this was my case. I just thought this is what you feel like. That's normal. You understand? Until I started to feel good, you go, holy crap! I never felt this way. I have energy. I feel good. I'm happy. You go, this is weird. This is new. Like, what is wrong with me? So when you know, if you live in the world where there's no color, you don't miss color. That's all you know. So a lot of people don't even know that they're not well. Do you know how many people tell me, "Oh no, I'm really healthy," and they're on 7 different medications. They're obese, and I'm like, "How are you healthy?" and they're driving because it's that we have this perception that's so skewed of what healthy is.
That's right. They don't understand what we're talking about.
But how would they understand? But that's my point. If you never seen color, if everything is black and white, then you can't understand. How do you explain color to someone? Do you see what I mean? Usually people start to pursue health when they're really sick. That is the only motivator. If you're okay, you're not having any problems, why would you change anything? Status quo all the way. So the only people that are making changes are the ones that are coming from deep problems, physiological problems. That was my case.
Otherwise, what?
Exactly.
Yeah. Otherwise, what
would have started doing this? No. But it came to be, you know, you do or you die.
That's right. But some people just don't. They just die. They just don't know how to deal with it.
Okay. And that's okay. That's their choice. Everybody is entitled to do what they want to do. As long as you're not hurting other people, it's your body. Okay.
Some of them don't learn the lesson and they just die.
The worst part is the children, because they grow up with parents like that, and their health is being destroyed with fast food.
That's right.
And this is really child abuse, right? But
I know. I work with kids and I see that, yeah, because of all the toxins and all the HDD problems and anxieties. Today, a lot of children, Ritalin, today a lot of children suffer from all kinds of problems, mental problems, anxieties and depressions, and they're unhappy, they're upset, you know, and what am I going to tell them? I mean, they learn something at home. So you can't contradict their parents. You can't, I mean, you understand that their parents are ignorant and they're not doing it because they don't like their children, but you can't fix the world. I mean, you see other people making mistakes on their children, and you just, I mean, so much ignorance around, so many people, you know.
Yeah.
You can't change anybody else.
Yeah. Okay, guys. We are over 2 hours and a half. So, are there any more questions, Ivana, that caught your attention from the group?
Let me see. There were some questions here that I thought I wanted to address. Okay. Well, 2 questions that I thought were interesting. One was about the psychedelic mushrooms. And I want to address this because I had an experience. I don't know about microdosing because I've never done microdosing. I've done like the full-on dosing. And when I did, it was the most indescribable, beautiful thing I ever perceived. There's nothing in this world that can ever come close to it. That it was just indescribable. There's no words. Like when you seeing colors that don't exist, when you feel the love, you feel connectedness, it was the ultimate cosmic conscious experience. But the question is, can psychedelic mushrooms play a healing role? Maybe microdosing if you don't have a trained guide to lead your journey. I've met people who guide their clients on mushroom journeys after a long master fast for deeper healing, mostly of the mind. So the point is that even that after that amazing experience, did it fix my problems? No. Do you understand? Yes, I was elated and I was in a state of euphoria for like 2 or 3 weeks because it stays with you, you know, and you love everybody and it's just amazing. You see everything is beautiful. Even the bad things are beautiful. You see how everything fits. It was beautiful, but did it fix my mental problems? No, it did not. So it's not a magic pill. It's a magic mushroom, but it's not a magic pill that's gonna all of a sudden fix your addictions and all that other stuff. It did not happen for me. I don't know about microdosing. You would have to ask somebody who does that. Now, another interesting question for me is urine therapy. This is a very controversial subject. Personally, I am not at all attracted to it. I come from the school of thought that urine is a waste product. There's a reason why we're looking for sediment. What is that sediment? It is that toxic lymph that the body is eliminating. So we're trying to get this stuff out. So I don't understand the desire to put it back in. That does not make sense to me. Now, I have looked into it because I don't have personal experience with it, but I wanted to see what's what. Now, there are over 3,000 different chemicals in our urine, over 3,000. And I don't even know what great majority of them does. Now, urine does contain stem cells, and these are bone marrow stem cells. And they have done some research where they have taken stem cells from urine, and they were able to grow teeth in a lab. But here's the kicker. It's not like they just put some urine in somebody's mouth and they grew teeth. No, what they did, they extracted the stem cells. They didn't use whole urine. They extracted the stem cells, they treated them, then they created certain conditions, they mixed them with certain things, and they were able to grow teeth. So just because something can produce results in vitro, in a lab setting, in a petri dish, does not mean that that's going to work that way in the body. I mean, we see this with the herpes cures. I mean, in a lab, in vitro, yeah, you put some monolaurin in there, St. John wort, some olive leaf extract and all oregano, and it kills herpes. But you can't keep it, you can't kill it in the body. So just because something can be done in a lab under very strict conditions, where everything is done right, it does not mean that it will translate to the body. So there's a young man, his name is Sean Walsh, I believe. If you go on YouTube and you search for, I think Sean Walsh, the vegan, he was doing some dry fasting up to 10 days a few years back, and he recorded himself. So it's something, another video if you're interested to see for the English speaking people who don't, who can't take advantage of Satmarga's videos outside of Arik's translations. So you can watch somebody else have a longer fast. And I think it's important because somebody in the group has posted a video of a woman that claims that she was breaking her 11-day dry fast. And from what I see, this woman is not fasting, she's on drugs. Because when you go 11 days, you do not act there. You don't talk a mile a minute and your mouth and jaw going back and forth. You understand? And you look at people who do it, like you look at this guy, same thing. He gets really skinny, his voice goes away. So there are certain commonalities that when you go to that extent that happen to your body that sort of translate across the board. So what this guy did was that he decided to give urine therapy a try. And he was really unbiased. He wanted just to see if this is true, what happens. He says, I'm open-minded. So what he did was he saved urine from his dry fasts. So when he broke the fast, he started drinking urine. And he had some very negative reactions. And of course, a lot of people go and immediately assume that it is a healing crisis. It can be, or it can be a health crisis where you're drinking poison, you're having a negative reaction. But the interesting thing that happened for him was that when he started to drink urine, he stopped making it. So he had to stop because drinking urine was preventing his body from making more urine. So he couldn't even get enough urine to drink urine, basically. So what he did, and he has a video where he sort of talks about it, he gives his opinion on whether or not this is something that's effective or should be done. So he said that he did not see any super benefits, but then again, he couldn't do it for any length of time because his body stopped making urine. But he does say that for skin and hair, it was excellent. So that's all I can say about that. I have no personal experience, and I have no desire to have personal experience, because I think that there are better, more pleasant ways to get healthy. And I think that when people look at urine therapy as the panacea, is you're still coming from the point of view that there is a magical substance out there that's going to make you healthy. And that is simply not the case. What makes you healthy is eliminating stuff, not putting stuff in. And this is why fasting makes you healthy. You see? So if you were to drink urine, the only way I would drink urine is when you've been on a dry fast for 20, 30 days, because after a while your body has detox. Up until then, you're getting garbage out. Now, a lot of people are using urine to rinse their teeth or, pull their teeth with it. But you have to keep in mind that pH of urine is 6. That's fairly, you understand, that's fairly acidic. So if you already have problems with teeth, I don't know if that's compatible for that specifically. But once again, I don't have experience, so my opinion is just basically opinion. I'm just extrapolating from things that I've read. But I'm looking at it from the logical point of view. If urine is a waste product, your body wants to get rid of this. And people say, well, when you go on a dry fast, your body makes endogenous water. Sure, but it's not making that water to feed the village. It's making water for its own function. So by the time that water comes out, it's already been processed and it has waste material in it. It's not like you're a mountain spring and you're just making water here. That water is there for a reason. And that urine is not going to be really clean until you've been on a dry fast like Satmarga for 20, 30 days, because he does collect his urine. And he says that it gets clear when you stop getting sediment out. But how many people can stay on a dry fast that long? There's only one Satmarga as far as I know. Haven't found anybody else who can do that. So I have mixed feelings about it. I can't tell people do it or don't do it. The best way to figure out is try it. It's simply not something that I want to try. And another thing is people go, there's so many minerals in there, so many. Yes, but if you look, at our poop, we have B12 in our poop because the B12 gets synthesized in our lower intestine, but it's just so far down that we don't absorb it. So should we now eat poop because it has B12 in it? I mean, this is not a good way of thinking to me. Just because something has something good in it, we're going to take all the bad with it as well. And I don't know if that's worth it. So it's something people should think about and consider and see what happens. Like, I would love to hear somebody who's been doing it for a long time, what has happened to them. Not they tried it for a week and whatever, but it would be good to see if there's been a positive change, a negative change, no change. What happened? I don't know. Like this Sean guy said, when he drank urine, first of all, it was extremely unpleasant. He said he felt like he was on cocaine. It was, he got hyperstimulated. It overstimulated his adrenals, he said. And then he stopped peeing as he started drinking urine. So he had to abandon it because he wasn't making enough urine. So that's all I have to say about that. And I think there was another, let's see. Yeah, I think that's it. But I mean, I don't know if, because there's one of the questions, what to do about emotional swings on fasting. And I don't know if that sort of got covered in what I talked, like, if, I don't know if you guys got any like stuff that you could use.
You know, I was thinking maybe will plan another webinar on tapping, and then we could actually address there, because I think
Okay.
tapping would be a great and relevant issue for the next webinar, even though we had another speaker the same subject a few weeks ago. But anyway, people will learn, of course, lots of new things from you. Yeah, so we'll just keep in touch. We'll plan another one if you don't mind.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's about the time to wrap it up. So, Ivana, maybe just because there are probably people who will watch this webinar as their first one. We also had lots of people who joined the group recently. So just tell them in the context of what you talked about, if anyone wants to contact you personally because of the emotional issues or detox issues, health issues, how can you help people, and what would be the best way to contact you?
Well, you can contact me through my website or through WhatsApp. The only thing I want to ask is that I have a lot of people who approach me and, you know, they want to talk to me, but they don't want to schedule time. Like, they expect me to take time out of my day and guide them and do that. And I simply cannot do that. Okay. There's a limit to how much time I have. And there's a limit to how much guidance I can give somebody without compensation.
Absolutely.
Right?
No, we are definitely
So,
talking here about paid
there
service.
has to be a reasonable expectations, because I get contacted all the time and people, I have this, I have this, I have this, and I said, great, let's book a consultation. Well, why don't we talk before the consultation? I mean, but that's a consultation, right? So we were all adults here, okay? This is a job. I have to eat and I have to keep a roof over my head just like everybody else does. So let's be respectful of each other first and foremost. And as far as what I do, I help people to get healthy both on a physical and emotional level. So you can either contact me for an iris reading, where you get the report. And my reports have gotten really long now. I've gotten to like 90 pages. So, because I'm trying, when you get a report, an iridology reading from me, you're not just getting whatever, you have a weakness here, you have a weakness there. Like, you're getting pictures, you're getting, this is where your line is, this is what it means. You can actually learn things about it. So, you know, my eye reports read a little bit like War and Peace, where we look at the devastation of your genetics, but then I throw in a horoscope and a little psychic reading, and you know, I give you a lot. And then you can get a consultation with that comes with a protocol, and we sort of decide what's the best way for you to proceed based on what you have going on. But I also do emotional work. And, you know, hopefully this webinar today had given you an idea what the kind of work I do. I work with people's inner child. We try to sort of reframe experiences. This is the only way you can actually heal emotionally. You have to take out of your unconscious, that subconscious mind, all of that garbage, because you're carrying it with you. If your parents were abusive to you, guess what? Now they live in your head. And anywhere you go, they come with you. And anytime you think about those experiences that happened to you, what you're doing, you are re-injuring yourself. You're actually, but now it's you beating you. Now it's not your father beating you. Now it's you, because your father is not there. Your father just, you know, whatever. But in your mind now you're doing it. Now you are the one abusing yourself. So it's very important to understand the value of forgiveness. You have to be able to let things go. And this is something I can sympathize with. And a lot of people have resistance with this. I had resistance with this. Oh, you want me to forgive my parents? Well, that means they get away with it. Why should they get away with it? They made me suffer so much. But what you're doing, they don't care if you let it go or not. You're the one suffering because you keep carrying the stuff and you keep repeating the history in your head. So the question is, do you want to be free, or do you want to be aggrieved? Do you want to be, somebody who wants to get their pound of flesh? You have to let it go if you want to be happy, if you want to be free, period. You can't do it any other way. So I help people get to that point. I teach them how to do energy work, different techniques and tools that you can use to work on your system, both physically, emotionally, and energetically. I have a program that is sort of like a 5-session program, but I'm working on putting it online. So right now, what you're actually getting, you're getting a lot of training stuff outside of the sessions, videos, instructionals and stuff like that, meditations. And then we work one-on-one to work on your specific issues, trying to make headway. And once again, cannot stress enough, you have to reframe. You cannot continue to recycle those memories. You have to change your memories. And you can do this with tapping, and it's extremely, extremely effective. And tapping is amazing because, and I recommend that people do tapping every single day. You get up, you tap. Same way you get up, you brush your teeth, you do your yoga, you tap. It sets you up for the day. Because what it does, the more you tap, stuff starts to come up. So right now, you may have nothing to tap about, but you start to go and you go, oh crap, now you start to have flashbacks. You start having memories. You go, oh my God, I forgot about this. So now you have something to tap about. You have to take a proactive stance when it comes to your health, physical, mental, and emotional. Don't wait for stuff to get bad. And a lot of people have resistance to getting well. A lot of people, when you go to them and they say they want to stop being addicted to food or cigarettes. And then when you go, well, what we're going to do, we're going to tap it in a way that you feel nothing. You cannot enjoy the taste of this food. And they go, oh, wait a minute, I am not ready for this, right? So they say they want to stop eating it. But when you say to them, well, we're going to make it so that, we're going to rearrange your mind in a way that when you look at pizza, you feel nothing. And if you taste pizza, it doesn't taste good to you. It tastes to you like soggy, wet socks. And he goes, well, I don't want that. Why? Because they have not let it go. You understand? So people have to be very honest with themselves. I had a client, she wants to quit smoking. Okay, so we're going to hypnotize you. We're going to do this. Well, how this is going to work? I said, well, we're going to make it so that cigarettes are going to repulse you. She goes, oh, wait a minute. She goes, oh, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't do this. So people tell themselves that they want to stop doing these behaviors, but they really don't. And this is what keeps them stuck. This is not rocket science. It's the reason you're stuck is because you're keeping yourself there. And, they go on these raw lifestyles, but they, out of the side of their eye, they keep an eye on that rice sitting over there, and they go, oh, one day I'm going to have that rice again. As long as you keep going back to the possibility of having that rice, you're not moving forward. You have to change your mindset, and you have to decide what it is that you want, and you have to be honest with yourself. You're the only one who can do the work for you. Like, if you come to me, there's only so much I can do. I can only guide you. I can bring you to the water. Here's the stuff, take it. But if you don't use it, nothing I can do about it. Everybody else is responsible for their own well-being. There's no coach on this planet that's going to make your problems go away. You have to do your work. And look at Revital. She's been flying.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Yes, yeah, you really helped me. Just like I've written, everything. You actually said everything today, that we have to detox. I mean, and you are an expert on the physical level, and also emotional level. you have special, I don't know, you're very perceptive. You sense the person, you read them, you understand. I mean, you understood my problem better than, without even having to say anything, you sort of understood it. And this idea that you mentioned today, the fact that you can take care of yourself, your older version, that's a brilliant idea. I mean, I've never come across it. When you go to people, again, you recycle the same things, and okay, and okay, there's no breakthrough, you're stuck there, and people really want to help you, but no one has these insights that I think that's brilliant, this idea, and genius, that your older version of yourself can help your young. I mean, you understand better than anyone else your situation and what exactly is your problem, and what exactly you're feeling, and what where you're stuck, and what might help you hypothetically, because you're an expert on your problems by now, but you don't think about the fact that you can help yourself. I mean, the idea of quantum physics, that you can go back and forth in time, and you can have a few versions of yourselves, and hypothetical other childhoods that you could have had, all this. I mean, it's unique, and yes, it has helped me. I can read. I mean, I can read what I've written you.
That's okay. But this idea of alternate selves is not hypothetical. I've had experiences with this where I spent time living through the eyes of somebody else, a different version of me. And that experience, even though it happened during my sleep, the experience itself lasted for days, maybe even weeks. I was there, but I woke up, it happened in a compressed, time frame. And when I got up, I was absolutely disoriented. I was horrified because I did not know where I was. I did not wake up as me. When I woke up, I was still that person. You understand? So I did not recognize where I was. It was an extremely discombobulating, unsettling experience. And then until you start to come down, it's almost like, okay, wait a minute. Okay, now I know who I am. But this is not just a theoretical thing. This is a thing. And when you experience it, you go, holy crap, this really is so. So, and what's interesting about this experience, because we're talking about bad parents, this alternate experience, my father married a different woman than the one that I knew as my mother. And I looked completely different. There was a completely different dynamic. And she died at 19. So I sort of walked in on her life at the tail end when she died. And how she sort of then, it was a really fascinating experience, and I didn't know what she looked like until I saw the picture of her, because when we are there, it's like when you're walking around, you don't know what you look like unless you look in the mirror, right? And this version of me, she was really overweight, and she was a smoker. And she was, when I walked in on that experience, she was 19 years old and she had passed. And, there were all these siblings that I never had, and a completely different family dynamic. Nice mom, which is really different from my experience. But I also had alternate experience that were sort of close. They looked a lot like this, but for example, where they diverged, where, I didn't move to New York. I stayed in New Jersey. And now how that line of development is going, but once you open up yourself to the idea that this is science, this isn't just theoretical. We just don't know how to make it work yet because we're not smart enough yet. So, but once you open yourself, you start to have experiences, your own experiences.
Wow.
Yeah, and there are books that you can read, by Robert Monroe, out-of-body experience guy, and Bruce Moen. Bruce Moen had some really, really interesting experiences. So once you start to open yourself up to the possibility, all of a sudden you start having these experiences.
Because yeah, it's like a lot of things are circumstantial. I mean, it's just coincidence if you think about it. If I only lived someplace else, if I only had a different parent, if I were born before my time, after my time, things are, you know, the world is changing all the time. And you know, if I grew up where I am living now, or with certain people, and
Mhm.
yeah, it's all
Or if you had married a
circumstantial.
different person, or it. But the point is, you already are all those people. They already exist. It's not like when you made a choice that disappeared. No, they're still there, because particle exists in all states simultaneously, which means any probability that is possible actually is a reality. That is what probability function means. And guess what? We are made of particles. Everything is made of particles. So if what the particle does depends on the intent of the observer, that means everything you perceive, you're the observer who observes reality that is made up of the particles. You are the one that organizes these particles in shapes, people, events. That means you have tremendous
So,
power.
so
If you learn how to harness that, imagine the things you can do. That's the whole point of
yeah,
it.
that you actually are in control of everything, and you're in control. That's what, you know, a
You're
lot of
so in
time.
control that you're allowing yourself to have an experience of being out of control. You understand? You chose to have that experience to know what it feels like to be out of control, but you're controlling that. You understand? You're controlling the level of
Yeah,
out of control you're experiencing in this particular version of expression of who you are. So there's no such thing as being in control, out of control. You're always in control. When you are out of control, it's
well,
just you
not,
pretending to be out of control so that you can see what that's like.
but as a child, you're out of control. You don't have control. You're dependent on your
Yes.
parents.
Yes,
As
except
an
as a
adult,
soul, except as a soul who chose those parents, you were in control because you knew what you're going into. That's not an accident. Like I knew where I was signing up for. And I had and by the way, I had the experience of being in in a non-physical dimension, and me being not an earthling and me wanting to come, and they're telling me you don't want to do this, and I'm like, no, I want to do this. They're like, no, you don't understand. This things don't work there the way you're used to. And I was like, no, I know I can do that. I really want to do this. And they're like, trust me, you don't want to. And I just fought them, and here I am, and I'm like, god damn it, I should have listened. And I'm like, I should have listened. So it's like the child when they go, I want a puppy. No, but it's a lot of work. No, I want a puppy. I'm going to clean after him. I'm going to walk him. And then you get the puppy. And when you have to do the rest, damn, I did not know this was going to be it looks so good. You know, when you see somebody else having a puppy, but when you have to do it, this is hard and I don't like it.
yeah,
It's the same thing. So, and that's the beauty of having out of body experiences. You can have these experiences of yourself as other, you understand, you're already all these evolved other parts. You have future selves that are not of this planet, that already are living in these energy dimensions, and through their eyes you can see that, you can experience that. And what that does, it sort of, it accelerates our evolution, because when people go out there, they don't get, what happens is they develop more love because they become so humbled with the extent of creation and how indescribably massive and immense it is, that it just makes you go, oh my god, I am nothing, but I have such reverence. But at the same time, when you're there, you feel that unconditional love that is like nothing you ever experienced. And I experienced it when I did the mushrooms. It was the most indescribable experience. I never wanted it to end. My friend thought I was going to become suicidal. I was like, there's nothing for me in this life. And I came out of this like, I said, I don't want to be here. I said, there's nothing here. There's nothing. There's no relationship, no experience in this reality that could ever even begin to compete with that. I said, it's insane that people are trying so hard to hold on to being here when there's all of this stuff. I said, this is the stupidest thing ever. And then they're fighting, hanging on with bloody fingernails with the medication. I'm like, what are you fighting? There's nothing here. This is garbage. This is what hell is, really. I mean, because I've seen the other side, and this is where I want to go. You know, so when it's like, it's the difference between people who always live in a small village and never go anywhere, and people who have traveled the world and seen different cultures. It's the same thing, but on a different level, a higher level.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Ivanna. And you know, it's very good that you came here on Earth, because otherwise, how could we have those amazing webinars? So thank you very much.
You have an amazing webinar no matter what.
No, we're not. It's not just like these people in the village and people that see the world.
Exactly.
Listen, everybody has something to contribute, and it's wonderful. And people should step up, because everybody has a story that could help somebody, and people should really step into their power. And I think it's wonderful that you have so many people coming on and sharing their experiences and what they have to offer, because everybody has something to offer.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, Ivana, so I think we're going to wrap it up for today, and we will be in touch regarding our next webinar. So guys, thank you very much. What?
Maybe another webinar. Well, enough. This topic is fascinating. Maybe we should have another webinar on this topic.
Yeah, we will probably prepare a webinar on tapping, but in addition, we can also touch other emotional issues. We will see. Yeah.
Okay, guys.
Okay, thank you very much, Ivanna. Thank you. It was wonderful, and thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone who participated, and thank you very much. Have a great life, great day. Lots of love and light to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.